All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So, today we're going to talk a little bit more about the imperialism, but we're not going to be talking about the kings and queens and countries fighting one another. Not like that. Today we're going to take a little detour, little tangent line, and we're going to actually talk about music, art, literature, science that went on during the 1800s. Okay. So, we're going to analyze what makes Beethoven's music, unique to the world. Or examine the difference between romantic and realism artwork and literature, things like that. And we're going to create an argument on whether we would know about germs if not for this guy named Louis Pasteur. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So here's your warm up picture. Basically, I'm just asking you this: who is the dude? Now, if you don't know who he is right off the bat, you can't tell me what his name is. That's fine. Okay. Now, but use your your detective skills and tell me. Do you think he's because we're talking again? Remember, music, art, literature, scientists. So tell me, do you think he's one of those? Which one of those do you think he is? Again, a artist, musician, somebody who writes books, literature, or a scientist. What do you think? Okay, and give some proof. Like if you think he's one of those, then explain. Like what gives that off? What proof do you have that he is one of those guys? Okay, but if you know exactly who it is, awesome, great job. Just put his name down. But if you don't, take an educated guess. That's all I'm asking. Okay, pretty easy. So pause the video, write your response, okay? Because we're moving on in three, two, one. Now, during this time, during the uh, this 1800 era, there was a large enhancement in music, art, and literature. This was known at the time between Romantic and Realism era. Okay, now, in art, there was a guy named Eugene Delacroix, and he was very influential romantic artist. Okay, and basically, there's two major characteristics about this guy: fascination with the exotic and a passion for color. Now, some students some years ago was like, "You mean exotic, like with like showing off, girl parts and things like that?" I'm like, "No, no, no. See, you have to remember, um, back then, showing off a girl's, chest area, on a statue or painting, um, that that was done. So I mean, nowadays you see that and you're like, oh my god, look, oh, they're showing this and that. But back then it was just like accepted, because people were more mature about that kind of stuff. Now people are less mature, things like that. So, but so that's not what we're talking about. We're talking like there. He's like really like if he's showing somebody, let's say committing a murder, he would show like the expression of joy or whatever it may be, the anger really in their face and things like that. You know, that would be more like it. And the passion for color, because you have to remember, some artists basically go, okay, you know what? Let's mix green, yellow, red, and blah, 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 you know. But this guy's like, yeah, let's do that, but let's add a hint of black. See what change how this color changes. Put gray. Let's change. Let's see what this does to this, and then, so colors were more, not just straight boom, boom, and that's it. No, they blended together, especially when you're looking at something like roundish and things like that. So if you know about shading, you know what I'm getting at. So dealing with colors, same thing. The colors just kind of turn where it goes from light to dark, and it makes a gradual change, not just a boom, boom, boom. You know, there's a lighter color of that red, slightly, you know, darker, the regular color, dark red, and no, not like that. It just blends so well. Okay. And he did say a painting should be a feast for the eye. So it shouldn't be just like, oh, there's a painting of a duck. No, no, when you see it, the colors, the imagery, the whatever, just should just like make gravitate you, just grab you by the eyes and just not let you go. All right. Because again, he really loved art. All right. Now here's the thing. His work was deep in color and variation, shades, and like I was telling you. But here's the difference between romantic and realism. Romantic art, whether it's literature, books or paintings and stuff like that, romantic had common man people, but strong emotional feelings, using nature and celebrating the individual. So, like they showed a painting of a man, the guy would be like, that would show his arm muscles rippled and, just cut up and things like that and show off the muscles from the body and, things like that. And it would have the use of imagination, exaggerate things just a little bit, you know. Um, Whereas realism is just that realistic characters, realistic setting, people doing what normal people do, Um, and if anything, a character development. So it might show somebody who did something wrong, trying to do something right, or she was just show the class system, showing poor people being poor, and middle class people being middle class, and upper people being upper people, you know. So it dealt with more how life was and didn't show off, the theatrics and things like that. It didn't really have that. Now, when it came to music, no one at this time was more influential than Ludwig von Beethoven. And no, we're not talking about the dog. Okay. And that's what one student asked me in class, legitimately asked me, you mean like the dog? No. We're talking about the real dude. Okay. He is credited with bridging two major types of music, classical and romantic. Okay. Now, here's the thing. Like I said in class, a lot of people when they hear his music, they're like, "Oh, that's nice classical music." It is classical, but the thing is, it has a hint of romantics in it. Uh, and the thing is, if you're don't have a trained ear for that, it just sounds like classical music to you. It's like no different than Mozart, and Bach, Chesnowski, and all these guys. It just sounds like them. But when you really hear his music, and again, if you have an ear for music like that, you can tell the difference, you know, between the eras and the artists and things like that. And like some students said in class too, like rap music. It's like, yeah, you listen to the old school rap music, Tupac, Biggie, and like 3 6 Mafia, Outkast, and all that stuff, right? You can hear the difference between each one, the beats, the flow, the rhyme and all that stuff. It just has its own distinct style, So yeah, but to other people who don't really care for that music, it just sounds all the same, you know. So here's the thing: arguments have been made that he was such a rare genius in music that it's difficult to actually say his music is actually classical or romantic. You can't really say it's this or this. It's kind of both, you know. Now, early in his work, yeah, it was straight up classical music, typical ones you kind of find with Mozart and things like that. But from his third symphony on, there was hints of romanticism and the dramatic intensity just bam really captivated with people. Especially when we get to his ninth symphony. Now, at one point, Beethoven went to Vienna, okay, when he was younger, to basically learn from one of the best, in my opinion, musicians of all time, which was Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. And the thing is, he never did. Okay. And everything I have read from all kinds of books and research, I have yet to find anything that says that they actually met, you know. Uh, but the fact of the matter is, Beethoven went to Vienna to try to learn from Mozart. Now, here's the thing. Another thing a student mentioned was, didn't he lose his hearing? Yeah, he did. He was gradually going deaf, and by the time his ninth symphony was he was creating it, he was basically completely deaf. And yet, some this way again, the music is still in his head. The notes and what kind of sound each instrument makes. He was able to make the symphony of all these instruments playing in unison and in harmony, and it's just considered his best piece of music, and the dude was deaf. If that doesn't tell you how talented this man was, I don't know what will. Now, one of the greatest writers, at that time, his name was William Blake. But Blake was not just a writer, he was a poet and a painter. Okay. This is one of his more famous paintings. This is called the Red Dragon, I believe, in the Burning Woman or the Woman and Sun, something like that. Um, but yeah, and the student asked me, like, or mentioned, he looks more white. Yeah, I know. But the colors, if you look around, there are hints of red. And no, that's not his eyes. Those are horns going from the front to the back. So you're looking at the back of him. So yeah, it's kind of a trip to look at, but that's the kind of paintings that Blake did. Okay. Now, both his literature and his poetry was very romantic. And he wrote two main books called Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience. Okay. And these are considered masterpieces of poetry. And when asked about it, he said the two books are contrary states of the human souls, you know, because he basically says that the our humans, people, us, we're not all completely good and we're not all completely bad. There's a struggle within us, the good and the bad, the light and the dark, and things like that. And it's that struggle that basically makes us us. Whether we fall to one side or the other, that's who we are. And we constantly change, and there are variations of us that will act a certain way with certain people and things like that. And so there's a lot of things, but the poetry is amazing. The philosophy of all this stuff, I can go on for days on this, but yeah, okay. But he wasn't the only author from this time. Sir Walter Scott wrote this book called Ivanhoe. It's like a really, really good book. I hate to say it. I have to admit it though. I never read it. I can't say anything about it other than what a lot of people say, which is, oh, it's a great book. It's a, it's a treasure of a book. Sure, I'll take your word for it. I never read it. Have no desire to read it. However, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, that book I have read. Mary Shelley was only like 16 years old when she actually wrote the book, and it's a fascinating book. If you have a chance to read it, you really should. And lastly, one of my favorite poets, Edgar Allan Poe. Um, and he wrote one of the more famous poems of his was The Raven. Quote, said the Raven, nevermore. That's him. Okay. Um, and yes, like one student said in class too, uh, the Ravens, like the football team, yeah, because Baltimore is the city he was from. That's why they named the football team the Ravens in honor of him, their most famous citizen, Edgar Allan Poe. Now, when it came to science, there were two major scientists that did fascinating work and changed not only how people live, but also our mindsets. The first guy is Louis Pasteur, which is that guy right there in that picture. He proposed this thing called the germ theory because he realized that from watching doctors that their patients got sick after a while when the doctors didn't wash their hands or use clean instruments and things like that, or just used it from one person straight to the other. Um, and he basically said, you know what, there's these little microscopic things when you touch something and things like that called germs. So when you touch something, and especially when for medical stuff, you need to have things sterilized and clean. Now, at this time, this is a theory that half the doctors around the world are like, who is this crackpot and what is he talking about? Tiny little microscopic things you can't see? Ooh, germs. Oh my God. Ooh. You know, so some people just thought he was a quack and thought it was a stupid idea. And then there were like another half of doctors who were like, that kind of makes sense, because that has happened to myself. my colleagues, people I've watched, where yeah, they don't clean their hands and don't use sterile instruments, and the people getting infections, somehow, some way. So that maybe there's something to this. So this is where the term germs and all that, the idea about washing your hands and stuff like that comes from, and it still goes on to this day. Okay. The other thing that he did too was the sanitation or cleaning of liquids like milk and wine. That's called pasteurization. And yes, like a student asked me in class, you can get sick from drinking milk. Yeah, if you get milk straight from a cow, yeah, you can get really sick. It's called milk sickness. People died from it all the time in the basically from 18, I want to say 18, like 70, 1880 and before, because they would just drink raw milk. But you have to clean it. You have to, boil it and things like that, to kill the germs and the bacteria and stuff. So that was all because of him. Okay. The other scientists who really made headway, really did some controversial work, which is still to this day to some people as controversial. Name was Charles Darwin. He's a scientist who promoted the idea that humans are material beings who are part of the natural world. We're not just boom here. We are part of nature and things like that. Uh, he wrote in 1859 a book called The Origins of Species by Means of Natural Selection. And basically, he's saying in that book that each species of plant, animals, everything have evolved over a long period of time from earlier forms of life. So, because he basically looked at like, why is this bear brown and furry? This other bear is white and really really furry, and this other bear is black and not too furry. Why? They're all bears, but why? Why is this squirrel, the fur is really thin, and this other squirrel, their fur is really thick? Why? And basically, there's nothing different about them. These that same organs, muscles, bones, everything. But why? And that's where it comes up with the theory of evolution. That everything comes from something else. Squirrels may have started all like this in one clump, and then some went this way, some went that way. Tectonic plates shift, things like that. So those animals have to adapt to their environment. So those who are in the snow, hey, they have to have thicker fur, right? If they don't, they die. Okay. And those that survive, hey, guess what? They're gonna mate with other squirrels who survive too. And guess what? Their kids are going to be the same way, have thick fur, things like that, and be able to survive. Same thing with like say a squirrel in the desert. They don't need a thick fur. It's hot as heck. So they're gonna lose that fur. And those furs that have a lot of those squirrels that have a lot of fur, they're gonna die out. So that's what he's saying. The natural, evolve the evolution of those creatures based off their environment. You know. And again, like I said, why it's controversial is because he said people derive from monkeys, because monkeys have thumbs, we have thumbs, you know. So um, some people were like, no, 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 he's so wrong, this and that. And some people are looking at his stuff like, he makes a lot of sense. And it does kind of seem, this thing of evolution does have some merit behind it. So, okay, so that's Darwin who came up with that. Now, here's the thing. For your question, you're gonna have to do this on your own. I played a little part of music in class. What you're gonna have to do is go onto YouTube and let me go right here and go to Beethoven. All right. Now you can pick one of these three songs, and what I want you to do is listen to it for like a minute, minute and a half, and basically write down what pops in your head. Okay. So you have like this song, For Elise. Okay. Um, so if you want to listen to that, awesome. Like a minute and a half, and tell me what you think. If nothing comes to your head, then listen to this one, Moonlight Sonnet. Okay. a minute, minute and a half, somewhere around there. And again, if nothing pops in your head, no imagery, no nothing, right? Then go with this one, Ode to Joy, but start it at 52 seconds, okay? Because that's when things start picking up a little bit. Um, so again, you're gonna pick one of those songs, and tell me what came to your mind when you hear it. Okay, don't watch those videos with your eyes open. Just close your eyes. Just let the music go. You know, and just what pops in your head. That's all you need to do. Okay. So once you've done this, you're done with this lesson. So hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed this. So with that being said, guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later. Okay.